Do you ever wonder who the most broken hero is in Overwatch? Better question. Do you ever wonder who was the most broken hero in Overwatch? If so, you're in luck. Today, I'll be going over who I think are probably the most broken heroes that Overwatch has ever had. This is an interesting topic to think about. See, Overwatch is a ever-evolving game. Patches come in and out, heroes change, things happen. And over time, the expected power level of heroes gets different. Right now, I'd say Tank probably has the strongest heroes it's ever had. So it's kind of a little bit tricky how you want to look at things. I'll be doing my best to look at every hero in a vacuum. Usually that lets you know how strong they are compared to the rest of the game. There are some issues with this though. If I look at it purely in a vacuum, all the most overtuned heroes are probably Overwatch 2 tanks, since putting them in 6v6 would be ridiculous. But if it's not in a vacuum at all, then it'll just be all the heroes from GOATs, because of how centralizing that meta was. I'm trying my best here, so just meet me in the middle, alright? If you don't like how I handle things, just, I don't know, make your own list. Starting off this list, we're going to go back a little bit. All the way to February of 2017. The devs over at Blizzard, they decide it's time to spruce Bastion up a little bit, right? Up to this point, he very much struggled. The meta usually revolved around a lot of D.Va and Lucio compositions, who can definitely run down a Bastion. To give him a little hand, they shifted where his design was structured a little bit. Seems reasonable, right? You're taking less damage while you're vulnerable. That's fair. Until you dig a little deeper. Things get a little bit fucky when you look at this with armor in the picture. See, armor, in specifically Overwatch 1, works in a very particularly funky way. In short, it has the damage you take up to 10 damage, in which it starts to reduce by a flat 5. So a Tracer body shot, which usually deals 6 damage, would only deal 3 to armor. If Tracer headshots you, which would usually do 12 damage, it would get reduced to 7. Ironclad kind of fucks this up, as it applies before armor. What this means is that the up to value moves up from 10 to 13.5. Things like shotguns and fully automatic weapons are 20% less effective consistently, at bare minimum. And that's before getting into the even more complex things, like how things already ineffective against armor, like D.Va and Winston Primary Fire, two of the best tanks at the time by the way, they get their damage reduced by a whopping 70%, which was the cap of damage resistance at the time. This made Bastion so unbelievably unkillable that he got nerfed in an extremely quick 4 days. Ironclad dropped from 35% damage reduction to 20%, and the maximum possible damage reduction reduced all the way down from 70% to 50%. Before the passive and damage caps in general got nerfed, Bastion could even survive Roadhog and D.Va's ultimates with a nano boost applied. Yeah, I'm glad they nerfed that. Anyone who had hoped for an enjoyable watching experience in the 2022 Overwatch League playoffs would end up sorely disappointed. For a new meta queen arrived. See, the Overwatch community wanted a cleansing ability in the game for a very long time. The idea of getting rid of annoying effects like Biotic Grenade's anti-healing, Sombra's hack, and the large variety of stuns in the game at the time just made sense. Some characters even cleanse themselves, like Moira, who was a popular candidate to cleanse, and Reaper, who has 2 abilities to cleanse with his teleport and Wraith form. Surely this couldn't possibly ruin the game. Surely this would result in a great concept for a hero. Cleanse? It's fantastic! Then, in a potentially rainy September afternoon, I don't really remember it that well, Activision Blizzard released what is fairly safe to say one of the most broken characters the game has ever seen. Kiriko has already had some massive nerfs in her short time as a character, and she still maintains a spot as a top support hero. Her teleport, for example, has 0.15 seconds shaved off its invulnerability, which used to be 0.4 seconds, a 40% nerf. Her auto fight when ultimate was nerfed incredibly hard, from costing 10% more to having the insane buffs it provides reduced from 50% to 30% speed, and cooldowns regenerating 3 times faster to 2 times faster. Her insane Susu ability would have its invulnerability duration reduced from 1 second to 0.85 seconds, a 15% nerf. And the time between Afudas, her primary fire, would go down from 0.85 seconds to 1 second, an 18% nerf. And she is still at the top of the meta, with Lucio and Zenyatta, arguably. It's up to interpretation. And before all that, she was absolutely the most over-centralizing hero in the entire metagame. She would delete DPS like Reaper, who was played to help delete Winston. She healed tanks infinitely to prevent them from being deleted by heroes like Reaper and Kiriko herself. And she had an ability that made it so the enemy team could not interact with anyone affected for a full second. She absolutely defined the meta and won Dallas Fuel a grand championship in the Overwatch League. Yeah, she was pretty fucked. But no matter how broken Kiriko was on release, she could not hold a candle to the top 3. See, the first 2 heroes were pretty fucked up, sure, but they were for the most part manageable. Kiriko, if you managed to get on top of her with no cooldowns, or if her team was too close to her, she was pretty easy to take down. Bastion, he was only broken for about 4 days until he got nerfed pretty heavily. However, starting off this top 3, saying these 3 words will likely put shudders down any seasoned Overwatch player's spine. The Moth meta.
See him just slow. Karq is still holding on to his. Now with Liberal fall despite they do bring him right back to life as they do Janus. Both.
Jesus fucking Christ, that is absurd. In late 2017 to about mid 2018, Mercy was a guaranteed must pick. Be it comp or pro, not playing this hero was basically giving an automatic loss. She was just too fucking much, man. There were times in professional games, not rare by the way, very often, where you would see Mercy players getting 4 reses combined, and that was just ridiculous. Those clips I included took me about 5 minutes between 4 or 5 owl VODs to find decent enough clips. That is how common this was. It was so easy to find good clips of the best teams in the world getting such insane value out of such an exploitable ability. And guess what? This was the nerfed version of this ultimate. By the way, credit to Muselk for this part. I know he's a bit of a villain in the Overwatch community recently since he switched to Fortnite, but mad credit to him for this clip. I don't know what I would do without it.
Ready to test the new res ability? On your go, Captain. I'm not seeing a kill yet. Hey, oh, there you go. Hey! And he's back again. There you go. Okay. And then you're back again, boy.
Thank you. That's
Infinite resuscitation.
That's another res. Oh, boy. That's another res, another kill.
Okay, and give me just 1 second, and we're back again, boys.
Yeah, talk about overkill. So overkill, in fact, that the hero got nerfed in just under a month. How did they nerf her, you ask? Well, on the PTR, which was experimental before we had experimental, her Valkyrie would no longer reset or reduce her resurrect cooldown. After doing some research for this video, I discovered something very strange. See, the Mercy change I'm talking about here is not listed in the PTR. So I thought, maybe I was misremembering it. Maybe it wasn't actually there after all. But then I saw this video.
Stemmed and started from Mercy getting her res changed so that her ulti no longer refreshes the cooldown or lowers it, it just doubles the range you can res.
I think that this is the only evidence of this change left on planet Earth, aside from the Blizzard forums posts that he references in the video. Blizzard removed the patch notes from the PTR patch notes, as if this patch never existed in the first place. It's just Mercy got changed, and the only piece of evidence is this random YouTuber's video 6 years ago. Wonderful. Sounds like a good change. Handles her getting multiple reses off in a single team fight. Makes it so that then it's harder to punish people for playing the video game. Seems like a slam dunk. You'd think so. I think so. Most people thought so. Then they would add one of, if not the most nonsensical changes in Overwatch history. This right here, this simple line of text that says, give players a bonus resurrection charge. This probably ruined the meta for a little bit. This was something that the Mercy players at the time begged Blizzard to give the hero. If we nerf her too hard, she's unviable. Ended up being not true, by the way. They were absolutely torn to shreds for even suggesting a significant nerf to the hero at the time. Which, granted, is a little bit understandable to a certain degree. She was very weak for a very long time up to this point, only really seeing niche usage with Pharah. But the degree in which people went about these nerfs were absolutely ridiculous, to the point where Blizzard listened and implemented this change. Mercy ended up being the best hero in the game by a significant margin for 2 more months, up until January the following year. The patch would have additionally make Resurrect no longer instant in Valkyrie, reduce Guardian Angel speed in Valkyrie, and reduce the duration of Valkyrie itself by 5 seconds, from 20 to 15. Overwatch League teams would begin to experiment for Lucio for a little bit after this, but even after all of these nerfs, Mercy was still just too damn good. Not only because she was still fairly strong even after these nerfs, but she just fit the meta well. At the time, the meta was Winston, Widowmaker, Tracer. Mercy really thrived back then, and she wouldn't really fade from the meta until the very, very end of the year, when the composition you've likely heard of came about. You'll have to wait a little bit to hear about that one, though. There's someone just a little bit less broken to talk about first. Goats was the way to play for nearly a year. Rollock would finally kill the comp. How did the meta adapt? How would teams adjust? Turns out, bunker comps starring Orisa, Roadhog, and D.Va would rear their head. Heroes like Moira, Reaper, Mei, Hanzo saw a pretty big surge of usage thanks to their incredible synergy, and patches trying to kick goats out the door, resulting in power creep. For a time, things looked pretty stable. The off-tank options were flexible, but between the two relatively enjoyed heroes, the DPS pool wasn't lavish, but it was fine enough. And even though it seems narrow, the support line wasn't bad. Mostly Lucio and Moira for sure, but you would see some Zen, Bap, and Ana at times. However, all this would come crashing down shortly later with the release of the Dutch destroyer of metas, Sigma.
San Francisco on the precipice, man.
The shock, the only thing that could get the shock in trouble here is Poke gets the supercharger, you may have to use his sound barrier, and then you don't have it for the Gravitic Flux.
30
That's how
seconds.
Atlanta wants the combo.
Gravitic Flux, Skater had to be a sound barrier. Smurf able to stay alive, but for how long? A Flux also coming out from the shock. Smurf is down. Master is removed into 1-for-1, but Poke push people charging. No! Oh, they got a walk off the sea! What? They walked off the car! No way!
Come on, you knew that clip was coming. If you didn't play during 2019, you likely aren't aware of the full story of how insane the Balance team was when they were releasing Sigma. His rock, it had more stun the further it traveled. His ultimate, it could never be cancelled unless Sigma waited it out. His shield, 1500 health and no cooldown on redeploy. The only thing that wasn't a straight upgrade back then was Kinetic Grasp, which used to provide him with only 40% health back from damage negated. Oh, don't worry. It wasn't objectively worse, as it still blocked a whip shot and hook on a 10-second cooldown. Oh, also, his ult came out faster. Have fun! Seriously, if I were to go over every nerf he ever had, this video would probably be even longer than it already is. And based on how, at the time of the script, this is over 2,000 words, it's going to be a decently long one. Just like how the slow after Gravitic Flux was decently long as well. A full second of sluggishness. 90% speed reduction. The part that really made Sigma broken was how well he fit into the meta at the time. See, I already brought up how Orisa, Lucio, and Moira were topping the charts. Sigma combined with them, bringing a mini DM and a hook block to outclass any other off-tank pick, to bowl over the entire metagame. It became Doomfist on both sides. He was the only DPS to genuinely synergize with and counter the tanks. Did I also mention those primary fire dealt more damage? This was the second and only second time that Bastion would be meta, thanks to his inclusion. If his initial state was put into Overwatch 2, he would probably be the best tank in the game. If nothing else speaks to how broken he was, that should. Before getting into my mysterious final pick, there's a few honorable mentions I want to get out of the way, so I don't get people asking about them. OG Roadhog with Hook 1.0, 2017 Sombra where she could charge EMP in 30 seconds, Junker Queen on release, Sojourn before her recent nerfs, PTR Doomfist, this guy was seriously fucked up, and 225 health Zen were all considered at one point, with Junker Queen being in the initial draft, but they just ended up getting cut because there were just other heroes who were just a little bit better than them. Still though, these guys are fucked up. Don't forget that. I don't think I need to explain how fucked up Brigitte was on her release. She had 250 health with 50 armor. She had a 5-second cooldown on a 50 damage bash that stunned for a full second on a hitbox 50% bigger, 150 burst healing E that can also provide 75 over health for any healing it doesn't do on a 6-second cooldown. And by the way, that over health, it's armor now. 600 health on her barrier on a 3-second cooldown if you manage to break it. Recharges at 100 health per second, by the way. A rally that charged much quicker and provided up to 150 armor to teammates, which, by the way, this armor goes under shield health that heroes usually have, like Zenyatta. An Inspire that's ever so slightly better at healing as long as you can keep it up. And by the way, her bash, it goes through shields. All of these absurd characteristics of Brigitte coalesced into the most oppressive, the most centralized, and the most dominant hero with the most absurd meta we have ever seen. By the way, that second long Brigitte stun on her shield bash, yeah, it's actually longer than how much accretion stuns for. It was just objectively unhealthy for the game. This is even before considering how broken Rally was on release. And I don't mean balance broken, I mean buggy broken. The armor provided would be much more effective. If you want to know more, Karq has a really good video on the most broken state of every hero. I recommend watching it. Very high production value, and he goes over everything very well. Much better than I can here. Somehow, even considering that Zenyatta used to have a 50% debuff on Discord Orb, yeah, I sneak those honorable mentions in here, Brigitte is still, by far and away, the strongest Overwatch hero ever. And without a doubt, a top contender for the single strongest character ever put into a video game. I don't know if anybody's actually gone over that, though. Huh. Maybe somebody should do a video on that.
Like that's ever gonna happen. What a load.
Hey, if you enjoyed, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, all that YouTuber stuff. I've really been trying to put a lot more effort into my content lately. I've been really proud of what I've been making so far, so if you've enjoyed, consider, doing all that YouTubery stuff. If you hated what I've done today, consider flicking me off and sending me hate mail. If you didn't care about the video I watched today, why the hell did you come to the end? And outside of that, have a good one.